yoga is just, the fact that we were just born in the home of enlightenment. I feel like we were just surrounded by yoga all the time, whether it was the hall that was right opposite our house where we had to, do yoga every early in the morning. After school, it was kind of like a compulsory thing that our dad would be like, you have to kind of go there and practice. Whether it was summer workshops, classes, we were always surrounded by it. And I also think that it was not just yoga, but even the kriya practices, the pranayama, the meditation. So I think it wasn't just when we were first introduced to yoga, I think we were kind of really just born into it, and it was always there around us.
I was probably just 2 or 3 years old. My father was making me do certain yoga poses because he wanted to take a picture of me, and I had no idea what was going on. But there's a photo of me doing Padmasan, and I'm probably I have no clue what yoga is at that point. My eyes are closed. I'm sitting in a certain way, and I remember feeling very peaceful in that moment. And even though I was in front of the camera, but just because my father kind of put me in that zone and helped me look a certain way in that photo, I remember feeling very grounded in that moment. And that was my, I think, first core memory with the practice. From there on, there's a bunch more, but I also remember when, we would have yoga workshops happening around us. And because our house was, in this ashram which is 100 years old, there was yoga around you at all times. And, you'd wake up to the sound of people chanting Om. So you're waking up to mantra chanting instead of maybe cars honking in Bombay, right? So it's a very peaceful kind of feeling whenever I think about the first interaction I had with the practice.
Yeah, actually that really reminds me, we were just kind of surrounded by yoga all the time, whether it was the energy, whether it was the chanting, whether it was the people, we were just exposed to it all the time. I think my earliest memories were the early morning yoga classes that we were not allowed to skip. We had to be there, 6 a.m. every day. The hall also happened to be just opposite our house, so we really had no excuse. But like Anvay said, I think it was just so peaceful, so grounded, and we honestly thought everyone grows up like this. So we would go to school and be like, hey, did you do your morning yoga today? And everybody would be like, what is she saying? So I think for us, that was the norm. That's just how we knew life to be. And ultimately, I think that yoga found us. We were just born into it. And it's only much later when we grew up that we realized we had such a unique upbringing, but we didn't know it back then.
Yeah. Until the age of 18, I didn't seriously practice it, in an everyday manner. There were bits and pieces or moments where it kind of helped me, like when I was giving my board exams, or if there was some stress, I would take help from my father or my sister. But the real change was when I finished my 12th grade exams and I became eligible to formally pursue yoga as a subject. And that's when it switched for me, because something in me after this, post 12th grade summer, something inside me said that, okay, I think I'm ready to take this up as a subject. And I happened to be going through something like a kind of difficult emotional period, where I would often talk to her about it. And after my visit to you, in fact, unpaid therapist, but after my visit to you in London is when it actually kind of switched. And then I did my first teacher training course, and then it kind of, was like a snowball rolling from there. So
when I was younger, I really wanted to be a professional badminton player, and I dislocated my kneecap in the 8th grade. And I think, as part of physiotherapy and kind of healing, I anyway knew some of the asana practices, but I took it much more seriously because it started to actually help me heal. And that was a really difficult emotional period for me, because from playing every day to being nearly bedridden for 3 to 6 months, it was really, really challenging. And yoga became my anchor in that moment, because no matter, even if I couldn't do major movements, I could always do simple foundational asanas. And the simplicity of the practice really drew me in at that time. And I remember that we had to choose optionals in our ICSE, and I said, yoga has helped me in some of the darkest times of my life when I was suffering from this injury and figuring out, okay, so I'm not going to be a professional badminton player. What does that mean for me? And if yoga was the anchor in those darkest moments of my life, then this is what I want to pursue. And so I think in the 9th grade, when I chose yoga as an elective to also study the philosophy, that's, I think, when it stopped being an activity and it started becoming just an anchor that can ground me no matter what else is happening in life. Went from wanting to be a professional badminton player to then I did a lot of course, yoga, but I also did a lot of cultural activities. So I was acting and modeling for some time. And I did that. And again, I went through that period where I realized I don't like this that much either. It's very nice, but it's not fulfilling. It doesn't make me feel like I'm connected to a larger purpose. And so I just finished the MTV Supermodel of the Year shoot. The shows were still running on TV. And I felt, people from the outside were like, wow, your first, TV show, this is amazing. And I felt really empty on the inside. And in that moment, I realized that I need to do something else, because while this is incredible as an art, say, endeavor, but it's not fulfilling from the inside. And so in those moments, when MTV had just ended and I was again tearing up, something within me said, you need to do something with the incredible ancient knowledge you've been given. All the Bhagavad Gita, Upanishad, philosophy classes we've had growing up. It's mainstream for me, but it's not mainstream for the rest of the world. And there's so many pearls of wisdom you can take from it. So something inside me was just like, you have to do something with this knowledge you have. And the word that came to me first was Gurukul. And I said, okay, like a university, like a learning platform, like a Gurukul. And then I said, but what is the nature of this Gurukul? And I said, I want it to be really yogic. And in yoga philosophy, sattvic, yogic is a certain quality that you have, which means you're peaceful, you're grounded, you're steady. And so I said, I don't want it to just be a Gurukul, I want it to be a yogic Gurukul. And that's how the name came together. But the name formulated, and then it took us a year to actually begin operations and start working together. But that's sort of how things fell in place. And then Anvay joined me, so you can share how you did that.
Should I? So yeah, like she said, the root idea kind of came to her in 2019, I think it was at that time. I was still in college, but then COVID hit. You're confined to your house. She was living in Bangalore at the time. I was in Bombay. When you're in your first year of college and then suddenly something like a pandemic comes, you feel lost. You're like, what am I doing? Why am I doing what I'm doing? So you get all these questions, But like she said, I think the foundation that we built in the ashram was so strong with yoga that no matter everything else kind of feeling like it was falling apart, at least you felt like you have one anchor. And for me, I was working with my father at the time, interning with him, helping him at the ashram. And then I think 6 months into the pandemic, she told me that she has this idea and that she wants to start this, and it's called Yogic Gurukul. And I said, listen, I'll leave college, come back, let's do this together. I'll do it now. I don't care about anything
He was
else.
on the video call like, I will leave college. Right now I'll leave college. And I was like, okay, I don't think you should leave college. But
So my getaway was, I'm not an academic fan, right? So I was like, sure, why not? But realistically, I think few months after that, we knew we worked well together. We knew we have a very strong sibling bond.
Yeah.
And so no matter what we do, because that sibling bond was so strong, we knew we could endure it and we could probably make this something really successful, because we feel like it's a part of our purpose, kind of taking this ancient knowledge to the world.
Yeah.
And so that's why I joined her, and it's been almost 6 years now.
Yeah.
And we haven't looked back.
I also want to add that I think growing up in the ashram, one big theme we grew up with was seva, and just doing your action being the karma yoga and the seva that you do. And I think we couldn't think of any better purpose or dharma, or just what would we do for free? Like if we could wake up every day and nobody paid us for this, we would still be doing this, And I think that's when we realized this is so much more than a job or a company. It's what we would do even if nobody was watching. And that's how we knew that this is what we want to do for the rest of our lives. So I think honestly the long-term vision is to have Yogic Gurukul University, to be an academic, to be the world's first yogic university where we teach the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, but in a supremely academic way, so that it actually changes your life when you study it for the incredible text that it is. So that's long-term. We want to be like the Harvard equivalent of Indian philosophy for India. The other thing we really want to do is create a new education board. So just like we have the IB, we want to actually have the IE, which is the Indian education, because there is a specific way in which Gurukuls function, and it's just that we don't see it now in the modern setting. So I think we're really big on academia and education. But coming to how we want people to feel, I think we just want people to connect with that part of them, that inner voice that often gets drowned out with everything that's going on around us. And there was this incredible quote that our teacher would always say. She would say that it's only when you tune down the blaring radio of the mind that you can hear the lullaby of the soul. which I think is just such a beautiful quote. And that's what Yogic Gurukul wants to do. We want to help you calm down that radio of the mind and hear the inner lullaby of the soul.
Being someone who's from the Gen Z, I know the things that people my age go through, and a big challenge that people have is dealing with emotional difficulties. Like it can be a breakup, it can be academic stress or parental stress, parental pressure. So I know a lot of people my age go through this, and for me, yoga has been an answer to that. And I think we can bring more of that out to the world, because otherwise people are just struggling, but they're not able to find answers to their struggles. And I think yoga is that one practice which gives you the answers you didn't know you needed. It can change your life quite literally because it changed ours. I think that I want to bring that out for people and help them realize that there is a way, and you can live a very holistic, joyful life, even with the challenges that come with it.
When you come on the mat and you leave all your problems aside and the practice just regrounds you, I think what you're left with is this feeling of bliss and joy. So that's a big one for us.
See, the real thing is that no matter how close you are, you have fights and arguments, you have disagreements, and moments where you feel like you just want to get out of each other's hair, because it's just so frustrating at times. But I think that's the sibling dynamic.
Yeah.
But when it comes to work and when it comes to having a shared vision, then no matter how much you may disagree, the end goal is the same. And so I think both of us very often, we have these up and down periods where it can be, at times challenging to agree upon one thing. But then at the same time, because the end vision or goal is very much agreed upon and is the same, then it doesn't matter, And I think our parents even named us that way, even kind of have brought us up that way, because her name is Anvita, my name is Anvay. And they're basically male and female versions of the same Sanskrit root word, and the meaning of our names is actually the one who bridges the gap. So if we're both kind of still bridging the gap, no matter what we're doing or how we're doing it, then it's very easy to work together, because you align in the long-term stuff.
Yeah,
So,
I think we must give credit to our parents. Very strategic decision in terms of naming us the way they did. But I think what I would say is, it's actually really comforting, because sometimes nobody else is going to understand the childhood we have. Nobody's going to understand the way we grew up. Friends can only give you that much support, but I think being able to talk it out with each other, and sometimes it's just me talking and him listening still.
Sometimes, or most of the times.
But just that ability to, I think, that there's always someone there. Someone's got your back. I think that makes a big difference. And I think ultimately, as he said, we want to do the same thing in life. So even if the form is different, the goal is the same. So we end up aligning eventually. I grew up being a very overachiever type of, vibe was the vibe that we grew up with, because at the ashram, it was like, you should aspire to be the best version of yourself. So whether it was academics, sports, cultural, we always kept, going in that direction. And sometimes I would also feel a subconscious amount of pressure, because we belong to a family that's been in yoga for the last 3 generations, and that means something. There's always something to uphold when you come from legacy. So I did feel growing up some amounts of pressure around that, and who I am and how I need to be in this world. But I think yoga made me realize that it's not about performing. It's not about showing up, and being a certain way. It's about what you feel on the inside. And eventually I could just say, whether I'm winning on the outside or having a low moment, it doesn't matter, because as long as I keep going and I show up on the mat every day, I think that's what really counts. So I think the biggest way it changed me is it helped me to stop being performative and to actually just be like, you know what, one student comes to class, nobody comes to class, I had a bad day, I had a good day, it's raining, it's shining, it doesn't matter what's happening, I'm showing up every day, and that's my sadhana. So it changed my metric from success and failure to whether I show up every day or not. So, yeah.
Hard to pinpoint one thing, but I think one that stands out, like she said, I think in a way it is similar for me. But when I really think about it, I can't imagine my life without yoga, because it's such a big part of who we are, and it's almost basically tied to our identities. Whoever we speak to, whoever we interact with knows us as the yoga boy or the yoga girl or the yoga guy, right? So it's so close to who we are that I think you can't imagine life without it. But then, your principles, because of yoga for us, I think our principles are so strong that, like for example, not having a drink when you go out, you can get swayed. But if you can stand your ground and be like, no, I'm not going to do this because I don't believe in it, or I don't feel right. It gives you that power. And I think that's the one thing that has changed for me in all these years.
Yeah.
The whole world thinks it's a physical practice. You think it's asana, you think it's ashtanga flows, you think it's pranayama, you may think it's all of these things, but while those are a major part of the practice, the real goal, and if you think about it spiritually, is self-realization. And self-realization might sound very hunky-dory, but I think the real meaning of that is knowing who you truly are. And if you know who you truly are, I think, there's nothing you can't achieve, or the world is yours to conquer. And so I think that's the one thing that people really, miss or misunderstand, because they don't know. They think it's the physical practice, or it's a gymnastics-based thing, or it's some kind of, aerobics or whatever. But really, you're doing that to just get to know who you are in a better way. And if I can give an example for that, it's like you do asanas, but not for the sake of building a muscle and flexing, but actually to be able to sit in meditation for a long period of time. So the real purpose is always that deeper kind of, direction. And so I think that's something that people should know.
I think also just the fact that yoga is not about flexibility. Anytime we talk to people, the first thing we get told is, I can't come for your class because I'm not flexible. And we're like, that's the whole point. And that's okay. Like, flexibility is just one part of the process. The things that you learn on the mat are so much beyond flexibility, right? You learn to trust yourself. You learn to catch yourself when you're falling. You realize that, honestly, if I can hold myself steady on the mat in a difficult asana, then I can hold myself steady in life when challenges come my way and things are not going as planned. So that's one. And I think secondly, it gives you a lot of conviction and power, like Anvay said. 6 years ago, I decided that I wanted to donate my hair for cancer patients, and I went bald during COVID, and it was such a beautiful experience. And people were like, how did you do it? How could you just go bald like that? And I could, because I had yoga as my internal philosophy, that if I want to do something, I believe in it, then I don't really care what people are going to say around me if there's something that I have conviction for. So yoga gives you that self-belief and power that's honestly unmatched. You can do anything once you have that internal belief.
Yeah. And one more thing, just to add to that as an answer, something you mentioned earlier about people coming in, thinking they have to be flexible. But we all started at zero.
Yeah.
I mean, none of us were born with the ability to take our leg behind our back, right? So you kind of build it. And so that was, I think, also a good point, because a lot of my friends do say this as well, where, but I'm not flexible. Yeah, so that's why you're coming to my class. So come and, come with an open, clean slate is what I'd say people should also practice.
And it's okay to keep getting better with practice. We all start somewhere. So
yeah.
I think what a Gurukul is that a studio isn't, is that it allows you to actually connect with your deepest spiritual self. I think what happens in studios sometimes is we're just coming in for a quick 60-minute class, doing a bunch of movements, seeing whether we were sweating enough or not, counting calories, and then making a dash out the door to be somewhere else. But I think in a Gurukul or in an ashram style setup, you're coming there with intention. You're coming there with sadhana. Very often we would actually do this to our mat, in terms of like, this is not just a mat, this is the tool and the vehicle that supports my entire practice. So we honestly have a lot of reverence for it. And that's the difference. You come in with the attitude of, I'm here to learn, I'm here to grow, I'm not in a hurry. Even if I have a meeting after this, I'm slow and gentle with my movements. So that's what changes the way you approach the practice. Whereas I think in a studio, nothing wrong with it, but it just has a different personality. It's just a different persona when you come into the studio.
It's a difference that I think we've been very lucky to see, because our upbringing has been like almost, if you compare a Gurukul to a studio, it's like traditional versus modern. And our upbringing has been, best of both worlds. We went to schools that were modern schools, but we grew up in an ashram which was 100 plus years old. So I think to us, what we're trying to build is a reflection of that. To me, that's the difference between a Gurukul and a studio, which is the rooting kind of foundation that a Gurukul has. I think studios, it's not that they don't have that, but I think somewhere that deeper sense of meaning and belonging is not there as much as a Gurukul has, because it's so deep rooted in culture and tradition, which is, I mean, thousands of years old.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think I'll add to that, and I also say that no matter whether you go to a Gurukul ashram or you go to a studio, what matters is your mindset. So what we want people to come in with is a different way of looking at the practice. You know, we see it as sadhana, as seva, as something that is deeply spiritual and connected to who we are. And I think a lot of times when you come into a studio, you're looking at how can I have the most intensive workout, how can I really sweat it out, which are all like great goals to have also physically. But I think that that's why sometimes we feel a bit empty inside, because we only touch the surface and we don't approach the practice with something beyond that. So as Anvay said, you know, one is of course the studios and the Gurukuls doing things differently, but it's also the people that come into the space and the kind of energy that they bring. We would love for us to make that change together, where we all come into it with, you know, this certain level of reverence that we're practicing. It's so beautiful, let's make the most of it. And growing up in the ashram, we would always start with a prayer, you know, and it doesn't have to be a religious prayer. It's more that here's the intention we're setting together. And I think that's what matters, that what is it that we ultimately want to do and feel through the practice. So that's what I want the Yogic Gurukul to leave people with the feeling of. And ultimately, I think we want Yogic Gurukul to just be a place where you come to find yourself, to meet yourself, and where you dedicate that time and energy to just see who you are on the inside.